Have you ever felt her silence screaming louder than words? That quiet glance, that sudden distance. Don't be fooled. Her silence is not emptiness. It's a strategy, a test, a trap. And today I'm going to reveal exactly why she's still watching you. Her silence is far from accidental. It's a deliberate, calculated move that holds more power than words ever could. While many assume that someone going quiet is a sign of disinterest or detachment, in reality, silence is a tool, an instrument she uses to observe, analyze, and influence without ever saying a thing. Think about it. Words can be interpreted, misheard, or dismissed, but silence speaks in a language that is harder to ignore. It creates a space where curiosity grows, where questions linger, and where the mind starts filling in the gaps on its own. When someone strategically chooses not to respond immediately or holds back their thoughts, they are doing more than just withholding communication. They are setting a stage. Every pause, every delay in a reply, every carefully timed disappearance is a deliberate signal, a subtle test of patience and emotional awareness. The moment she becomes silent, she shifts the dynamics entirely, moving from being just another presence in your life to a force that occupies your attention even without interaction. This tactic is rooted in psychology and human behavior. People naturally seek closure, answers, and understanding. When confronted with uncertainty, the brain starts to overanalyze, replaying interactions, searching for hidden meanings, and attempting to predict outcomes. Her silence exploits this pattern beautifully. By withholding words, she forces a heightened level of focus on her actions, her presence, and even her absence. Suddenly, every small detail matters. The tone of a single message, the timing of a post, the subtleties of body language when you're around her. Silence isn't emptiness, it's a spotlight. She controls the narrative without ever speaking, and in doing so, she gains insight into your reactions, your values, and the strength of your emotions. She observes how you handle ambiguity, whether you panic, chase, or wait calmly, and each response reveals more about your character than you might realize. In essence, her quietness becomes a mirror reflecting your true self. What makes this strategy even more powerful is its unpredictability. Silence is not just about not speaking. It's about creating a sense of tension, a sense of mystery, and a subtle pull that draws attention inward. When someone chooses not to share their thoughts openly, the mind begins constructing scenarios, projecting feelings, and imagining intentions. Every mental scenario you play out in her absence reinforces the idea that she is present, that she matters, and that her attention is valuable. This makes silence a trap in itself, not a malicious one, but one that is undeniably effective. It's fascinating how much influence a person can wield without uttering a single word, simply by stepping back and letting the human instinct to seek connection take over. Moreover, silence communicates control. It establishes boundaries without confrontation, demonstrates confidence without arrogance, and reveals power without aggression. While words can be argued, challenged, or dismissed, silence is unarguable. It commands respect because it is deliberate, measured, and intentional. She's not responding impulsively or emotionally. She's choosing her moments with precision. Every pause, every calculated absence becomes a reflection of intention rather than negligence. This is why understanding her silence is crucial. It's not about waiting for words to appear. It's about observing what those moments of quiet reveal. What does it say about her awareness of your behavior? What does it teach about her perception of relationships, attention, and emotional value? In silence, there is clarity, but only if you pay close attention and resist the urge to react blindly. What many fail to realize is that when she watches without speaking, it is not indifference. It is intentional observation rooted deeply in human psychology. Silence, when combined with focused attention, creates an emotional magnet that is far stronger than constant communication. Humans are wired to notice patterns, to seek meaning, and to respond to stimuli that are ambiguous. This is why someone who chooses to remain quiet while still paying attention can have an influence that is subtle but profound. Her eyes, her gestures, her presence, even if unspoken, send signals that your mind cannot ignore. You notice her in ways you might not notice someone who constantly talks, because the quiet creates a gap that your brain instinctively wants to fill. You start replaying past interactions, analyzing moments you might have overlooked, and wondering what she might be thinking. This is not just curiosity, it is a psychological pull, a force that keeps her presence alive in your mind even when she is not actively engaging with you. Watching without speaking gives her insight into your behavior without triggering defensiveness or altering your natural responses. When someone is silent, you act without filters. You respond without realizing you are being observed. Every reaction, every small expression, and every emotional display becomes information. This is where the power of subtle observation comes into play. By silently watching, she gathers knowledge about your tendencies, your emotional triggers, and even your intentions. She doesn't need to interrogate or question. You reveal yourself through your own actions. This technique works because it leverages a universal human instinct, the desire to be noticed and understood. When someone observes us quietly, we are drawn to them, unconsciously seeking validation and recognition. The paradox is that while her silence creates distance, it also amplifies your awareness of her presence. The mind fills in the blanks, constructing narratives that make her more important in your thoughts than if she had been constantly vocal. There is also a subtle form of control embedded in this behavior. When someone watches without speaking, they establish a presence without demanding it. This allows them to influence without confrontation. Your attention, your reactions, and your emotions become a stage on which she quietly tests boundaries, measures patience, and evaluates sincerity. The human brain is especially sensitive to uncertainty, and ambiguity creates tension that naturally draws focus. Her silence exploits this mechanism, creating a psychological loop where you are compelled to seek meaning, often overanalyzing situations that might have seemed ordinary. Every glance, every unspoken gesture, every pause becomes a message, a puzzle piece your mind cannot resist piecing together. This strategy is subtle but effective because it taps into the universal desire for connection and understanding. While words can mislead, silence combined with attention is impossible to ignore. It forces introspection, reflection, and heightened awareness, all while maintaining an outward sense of calm and control. Watching without speaking is not passive. It is deliberate, conscious, and remarkably powerful. It transforms her from a mere participant in your life to an active influencer of your thoughts and emotions, all without uttering a single word. Silence has a way of infiltrating your mind in ways that words never could. When she chooses not to speak, the space she leaves behind is never empty. It is charged with tension, curiosity, and emotion. Humans are wired to respond to social cues, and one of the most powerful cues is the absence of communication. Her silence doesn't just create a physical gap, it creates an emotional vacuum that your mind instinctively tries to fill. You find yourself replaying every interaction, every fleeting glance, every word exchanged, searching for hidden meaning or subtle clues. This is not just overthinking, it is your brain reacting to the psychological pull that her silence exerts. The quiet is purposeful. It draws you in, amplifies your attention, and forces you to notice things you might have ignored if she were constantly communicating. Her absence of words creates a heightened awareness of her presence, a paradox where she is simultaneously distant and intensely felt. The emotional impact of silence is profound because it engages your imagination, curiosity, and even insecurity. When someone stops speaking or pulls away, it triggers a cascade of emotions: wonder, longing, uncertainty, and sometimes even obsession. You start projecting your thoughts onto her behavior, attributing intentions, motives, and feelings that may or may not exist. This mental engagement makes her presence even stronger in your life. Despite the lack of direct communication, silence has the power to make you question yourself, your actions, and your value, but in a way that subtly pulls you closer rather than pushing you away. Her quiet observation is a mirror reflecting your emotions back at you, magnifying them and giving her insight into your inner world without ever needing to ask a single question. There is also a subtle tension that silence creates, a tension that is both uncomfortable and addictive. When someone remains quiet while still observing, your mind experiences an emotional imbalance. You want answers, clarity, and interaction, but you are denied them. This tension keeps you on edge, constantly engaged, and acutely aware of her presence. Every small sign, every subtle gesture, and every brief acknowledgement carries far more weight than it would if she were always talking or explaining herself. Silence heightens the emotional stakes because it leaves room for interpretation, curiosity, and anticipation. The human brain craves resolution, and when it cannot find it, it becomes hyper-focused, analyzing every detail in search of meaning. Her silence ensures that your attention stays fixed, even when she is not physically present or speaking. This emotional impact is further amplified by the unpredictability of her behavior. Unlike words, which can be anticipated, silence is ambiguous. You never know what she is thinking, how she feels, or what her next move will be. This ambiguity intensifies emotions, making every interaction, every glance, and every brief moment of engagement feel heavier, more significant, and more charged. It is a subtle form of influence where she shapes your emotional experience without manipulation or coercion, simply by remaining quiet. Silence in this way becomes a tool of emotional influence, one that creates connection, fascination, and tension simultaneously. Her silence is not passive, it is active, intentional, and deeply psychological. It shapes the way you feel, think, and even act without her ever having to speak. Understanding this emotional impact is essential because it allows you to recognize the forces at play, see through the tension, and observe her intentions more clearly. The question that lingers in your mind is simple. Why, despite her distance, despite her silence, does she remain present in some way, observing, noticing, paying attention without words? The answer lies in a combination of curiosity, strategy, and emotional awareness. When someone chooses to watch without speaking, it is rarely passive. She is not merely keeping tabs for the sake of habit. She is collecting information, gauging reactions, and understanding your emotional patterns. Every glance, every subtle interaction, and every unspoken observation provides insight into your personality, your priorities, and your patience. By observing quietly, she gains a clearer understanding of who you truly are when no one is pushing or influencing you. This is not about manipulation in a harmful sense. It is about understanding and measuring the situation, the connection, and the value each interaction holds. Humans are complex, and emotions are even more complex, She understands this, whether consciously or unconsciously. Watching you allows her to decipher your emotional responses, your behavior under uncertainty, and your resilience when things do not go according to plan. People often reveal their true selves in the absence of direction, and her silence creates exactly that environment. Without the need for conversation, confrontation, or explanation, she sees the raw, unfiltered reactions, the patience, the curiosity, or even the anxiety that emerges in moments of ambiguity. In this sense, her observation is an emotional calibration. She watches to understand how invested you are, what motivates you, and how your emotions align with her presence, absence, or the signals she is sending. Another reason she continues to watch is subtle influence. By silently observing, she exerts a quiet presence that keeps you mentally engaged with her without demanding direct attention. This creates a magnetic effect. Your mind is drawn to her, your thoughts revolve around her actions, and your emotional energy gets partially focused on her. It's fascinating how someone can maintain influence over another person without saying a word. Her quiet attention becomes a mirror, reflecting your responses back at you while simultaneously letting her gauge whether you value her attention. Notice her subtle cues, or act in ways that align with her expectations. Watching without speaking also allows her to maintain control over the pace and direction of your connection. She can test boundaries without confrontation, evaluate interest without pressure, and understand your mindset without forcing a reaction. Her silence keeps you alert and aware, prompting reflection on your feelings, your decisions, and your intentions. She is not pushing, chasing, or demanding. She is observing, and that observation is often far more revealing than any conversation could be. This quiet attention allows her to see patterns, inconsistencies, and emotional truths that are otherwise hidden in normal interactions. Finally, she continues watching because she wants clarity. Every person experiences relationships differently, and she is likely trying to understand where she stands, what your intentions are, and whether your actions align with your words. Silence gives her the space to analyze without interruption, to assess without pressure, and to understand without overcomplicating things. It is a strategic way to ensure that her perception of you is accurate and that your emotions and responses are authentic. In this sense, watching without speaking is both an act of self-preservation and insight. It ensures she is not misled while also giving her the upper hand in understanding the situation fully. Recognizing her silence as a trap is one of the most important skills you can develop because it allows you to understand the dynamics at play without getting emotionally caught off guard. The trap is subtle. It doesn't come with clear signs or loud warnings. It hides in small, almost imperceptible details, the nuances that most people overlook because they expect communication to be direct and obvious. Yet her silence is intentional, and if you pay close attention, the signals are all around you. One of the first indicators is consistency without engagement. She may still follow your life closely, notice your actions, or interact in minor ways, such as liking a post or responding briefly, but she doesn't fully engage. These small acts suggest that she is aware of your presence and actively observing, but she is choosing the level of attention she gives. This careful balance between noticing and speaking is a hallmark of strategic silence. It keeps you aware of her without giving her away completely. Another key sign is the emotional effect it produces on you. When someone's silence causes you to overthink, question your actions, or replay interactions repeatedly in your mind, you are feeling the psychological impact of the trap. This is not just anxiety or confusion. It's a subtle pull that keeps you mentally invested without direct interaction. Your brain begins to fill in the blanks, projecting motives, intentions, and feelings onto her behavior. This mental engagement is exactly what she wants. It allows her to observe how much energy, thought, and emotion you are willing to invest in her presence, even when she is absent. Recognizing this pattern is essential because it separates genuine connection from psychological influence. When you realize that your thoughts and reactions are being guided by her silence, you can start to interpret the situation more objectively rather than reacting impulsively. A third indicator is attention to patterns rather than isolated actions. A single instance of silence might not mean anything significant, but repeated behaviors over time often reveal a strategy. Does she disappear after showing interest? Does she watch quietly before stepping back? Does she respond selectively, keeping you guessing? These repeated actions are clues that her silence is intentional, and they provide insight into her motivations. By observing patterns rather than reacting to individual moments, you begin to see the broader picture, the trap in motion, the subtle orchestration of attention and distance. The context of her silence is also revealing. Silence in moments of heightened emotion, conflict, or uncertainty is rarely accidental. If she chooses quietness when you expect a response or when a situation demands clarity, it is a conscious choice designed to elicit reflection and gauge your reaction. Similarly, her silence in social settings, group interactions, or online spaces can be a way of maintaining observation while testing boundaries without confrontation. The placement and timing of silence are just as important as the silence itself. Finally, how she watches when she is present is a subtle but powerful clue. A glance that lingers longer than usual, a smile that feels calculated, or attention focused on your actions without engagement, all of these indicate observation without dialogue. This is the hallmark of the silent trap: presence without commitment, attention without words, influence without conversation. Recognizing these signs gives you the ability to step back, analyze the situation, and respond intentionally rather than being pulled into emotional reactions. Once you recognize her silence as a deliberate trap, the next step is to transform that awareness into insight, into a tool that empowers you rather than confuses you. The first thing to understand is that her quiet observation is less about you being tested for mistakes and more about revealing truths, about your emotions, your patience, and your self-awareness. Silence forces reflection. When someone holds back their words, they create space for you to process your own feelings, confront your reactions, and consider what you truly want from the situation. If you allow yourself to see it from this perspective, you can turn her silence from a source of anxiety into a mirror that reveals your emotional patterns. Observing her silence objectively gives you the power to analyze behavior without emotional distortion. When her absence or quietness triggers overthinking, that is precisely the moment to step back and evaluate your reactions. Are you becoming anxious, desperate, or defensive? Or are you responding with calm curiosity and self-assuredness? Her silence exposes not just your feelings for her, but your general approach to uncertainty and emotional discomfort. By noticing these patterns, you gain insight into yourself first, which is far more valuable than trying to decode her every action. Her trap, in this sense, becomes a tool for self-reflection, helping you understand your boundaries, emotional triggers, and level of resilience. Another important aspect of turning the trap into insight is learning to interpret the signals she gives without overanalyzing or assuming intentions. Subtle cues, like occasional glances, indirect messages, or careful observation of your actions, carry meaning only when viewed in the broader context. Her silence is not random. It is a series of deliberate pauses designed to draw attention, test patience, and maintain connection without words. Recognizing this allows you to shift from reactive behavior to strategic understanding. Instead of feeling lost or manipulated, you start to see the patterns clearly, identifying when her silence is a sign of curiosity, caution, or genuine interest, and when it is simply a boundary she is maintaining for herself. This awareness also allows you to maintain your emotional equilibrium. Rather than being pulled into the trap, you observe from a position of calm, analyzing without panic or emotional overinvestment. The more you can separate your own feelings from the impact of her quiet observation, the more control you gain over the situation. Her silence becomes less a weapon and more a lens through which you can see your own emotional reactions and her subtle cues with clarity. It teaches patience, self-control, and the art of discerning intention without needing constant confirmation. Finally, turning the trap into insight is about empowerment. Once you understand why she is watching, you can decide how to act wisely. You can choose whether to respond, engage, or step back without being trapped in reactive emotions. Silence, when understood, becomes a teacher, revealing the unspoken truths of both parties. It forces awareness, encourages mindfulness, and highlights the power dynamics that are otherwise invisible in constant communication. Her quiet observation, once deciphered, is no longer a trap but a roadmap, guiding you toward clarity, self-understanding, and strategic emotional intelligence.